Great. Point number 6, Japan enters recession. The yen falls again. Gary, give us the breakdown on what's happening there.
Yeah, so we've been talking about issues in Japan for about a year and a half now. I first started talking about Japan potentially facing a sovereign debt crisis.
Very early on,
Yeah, it was October of 22, I
right
think,
around. Yep.
something like that. So what's happened in Japan is the government took on insane levels of debt, something like, 260% of gross domestic product. And that's fine when you have interest rates of zero, or in the case of Japan, for a while, they actually had negative interest rates,
Hmm.
right? So if by taking on debt, somebody were to give you the money that you were borrowing and then also give you interest on it, so you were making profits on that, we'd all do that as well, right? And so because of that, Japan could afford to run up massive amounts of debt. They spend, like the US Congress does. And so what happened was we started to have inflation all over the world, and central banks all over the world, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, all started raising rates. And the Japanese the Bank of Japan, which is basically the Japanese government bank, they kept the rates on their 10-year, they've kept rates below 1%, but for much of that time, Rob, rates were something like 25 basis points or 50 basis points, like really, really cheap. Whereas, in the US, we were looking at numbers that were in the 4 or 5% range. And so what happened was people sold yen at almost 0% rates, and they bought dollars, and it's called the carry trade. And they were booking what were, close to risk-free profits as long as you could hold on to the currency differences and didn't lose money on that. So all of that buying pressure of the dollar and selling pressure on the yen pushed the yen out past 150 yen to the dollar. Now, is that a big deal? Yeah, it is if you're Japanese, because Japan is a small island nation. They have to import a lot of their goods, and they have to import their energy, and most energy is priced in US dollars. So a couple of years ago, the yen was trading at 115 yen to the dollar. That slid about 30% to 35% to more than 150 to the dollar. And so, for all the people listening to this who, have felt frustration over the last couple of years when you go fill your car up with gas or heat your home, because energy has gotten more expensive. Um, Imagine being Japanese and doing that and having to pay another 35% because your currency has depreciated against the dollar. Now, to make things even worse, Japan has had negative GDP growth for the past 2 quarters. They entered recession in the middle of last year. There's no guarantee it'll be positive this year. And they have now slipped, despite Germany's problems, from the third largest economy in the world to the fourth largest, having decreasing GDP, massive government spending, a declining yen, and an enormous problem with your interest rates, right? Where you can neither raise rates because your government can't afford to pay the interest on all of that debt, or lower rates because then you'll crash your currency and create an inflation problem for your people. They are incredibly stuck, right? They're in a position now where no matter what they do, it's going to end badly. And I would just point out that this is a warning to overspending, over leveraged economies like Western Europe, the European Union, to Great Britain, and here in the United States. And that's kind of the order where we're going to see these problems. But what we've been saying for more than a year is you're going to see a huge problem in Japan, then Europe, then England or the UK, and then here in the United States. I don't think we're necessarily in good shape here. We're just a few years behind Japan's disaster.
Very interesting. Thanks for breaking that down, Gary, and very interesting to see how that all plays out.